Hang on, Pops. Mind if I do it? She was like this. Anyway, Andy Lewis, councillor for Senvale. Now you can go.
Good evening all. Pam Tracy, Sitting County Councillor for Westgate, Moorlands. Moorlands, where else am I? Podsmead, Linden.
That's county, Pam.
As well, yeah, but it comes under council.
Alistair Chambers, Matson, Robbinswood, White City.
Paul Reedold, Hucklecote.
Rosanna Marshall, Barton and Chedworth, councillor.
John Jones, councillor for Kingsway.
Osman Haimia, councillor for Barton and Tedworth.
Linda Castle, Vice Chair for City Council for Long Levens.
Charlotte Lockwood, Legal Advisor.
Nana Pierre, Economic Growth Officer.
Thank you very much. We've received apologies from Councillor Harris. I don't know if there are any other apologies to be noted. No, just the one. Do we have any declarations of interest for items being discussed this evening?
I need to declare an interest in the ice rink application. So I'm a Director of GDEC.
Chambers required to withdraw for that one?
Yes, I've spoken to Councillor Chambers and she'll just step out of the meeting for that moment or to the back of the room and then come back once it's been decided.
Thank you. So we have the minutes. Has everybody seen the minutes and happy with them as a true account of the discussions? Yes, thank you very much. Next item is late material. Have members reviewed all of the late material? If not, let me know if you need time to discuss. Councillor Weederholt, do you want to have a look through it?
Did not realise there was late material. When did that come in?
Last night, yesterday.
When I was in the finance committee meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Training.
Oh, God.
Sorry, I've not had a chance to review that yet.
It's only one and a half pages.
Bear with me, Chair.
So we move on to the planning application, and this is for proposal in the docks. I'll ask the officer to introduce the case, please.
Thank you. This is an application in the docks and the very northernmost part of Gloucester Quays for what is effectively a continuation of the Christmas market and ice rink proposal that's been ongoing for the better part of the last decade, certainly in a very similar format for the past 5 years. And so this proposal is to use the site in the docks for a temporary period for the Christmas market and the ice rink for the next 5 years over the Christmas period. I'm sure members will be familiar with the site, but just for familiarisation, this is the lower part of the site, so Orchard Square in this position here, and then the site also creeps into the top part of Gloucester Quays down Merchants Road on this side and High Orchard Street on this side, and then moves up into the northern part of the docks around Victoria Dock in this position. And then this slide shows the northern part alongside the Southgate Moorings car park, the area to the east side of Victoria Dock and into Mariners Square. The applicant has provided us with 2 plans. This one is a higher level overview of the application site. So the darker blue areas in here, the rectangles are the areas for the market. alongside Victoria Dock in Mariners Square, and then into Orchard Square where you have the ice rink proposal here and the associated food and beverage offer here, and then extending down into the top parts of Lanthony Road, High Orchard Street and Merchants Road. And this is the second plan, which shows the Orchard Square area in a little bit more detail. So here we have the ice rink proposal and then the associated sort of waiting area and accesses and the technical compound behind it on the right-hand side as we look at it there. And the food and beverage offer here in the white. The following slide are some images that the applicant sent to us of the temporary structure. So this is the tented structure for the ice rink area. The tents and structures and stalls for the food and beverage offer in Orchard Square, the market stalls, and then we're on to some photographs of the site. So that's Orchard Square looking southwards towards Gloucester Quays across the square. This is looking back towards the west side of the square. So the Waterways Museum in the larger warehouse at the far end and the public house in the foreground. Mariners Square with the barge arm flats on the left and the older converted warehouses in the background round to the right. Victoria Dock looking southwards, so the actual dock is on the right-hand side of that slide. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now come to the public speaking section of the item. We have Simon Metcalfe down to address us. You have 5 minutes to speak. Do you want a 1 minute warning?
Good evening, members. My name is Simon Metcalfe. I'm the planning agent from Alder King. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. The application before you seeks planning permission for the temporary use of Orchard Square and parts of Lanthony Road, Merchants Road, High Orchard Street, Victoria Dock and Mariners Square for the holding of a Christmas market and the erection of an ice rink. The proposed Christmas market and ice rink would operate in a similar manner to that which the City Council has supported and approved previously and which has successfully operated for the past 8 years. The last planning permission granted to us in 2019 expired last Christmas, and at this point the desire is to obtain planning permission for the next 5 Christmas periods. This length of time reflects the certainty required by the applicant to make the significant financial investment required to deliver this event for the city. We're pleased that following thorough consideration of the planning application, your officers are supportive of the proposal. The Christmas market and ice rink make a significant contribution to the economic success of the city over the Christmas period, drawing in customers from a wide area. Our client has worked hard over the years to engage with stakeholders and residents to minimise any inconvenience from the event. The proposals have been refined and improved over recent years, and improvements have included the covering of the ice rink to minimise noise and the effects of inclement weather on the surface, enclosing and acoustic screening to the plant, and revisions to the timing and layout of the market itself. It is noteworthy that there have been no complaints regarding noise in the past 3 years. We firmly believe that the current proposal strikes an appropriate balance between respecting the amenity of local residents with the commercial interests of the wider city, noting that this is a city centre location where such events would be part and parcel of the normal environment. This planning application has been widely publicised by the council, with site and press notices being posted and in excess of 350 immediate residents being directly notified. While we are aware of some recent negative press about the proposal, only one single letter of objection to the application has been received. This lack of objection to the proposal is testament to the hard work of the applicant to ensure that the Christmas market and the ice rink takes appropriate account of the site constraints and the interests of local residents and businesses. We'd also note that 2 letters in support of the proposal have also been received. Indeed, we've been contacted this week by a local resident who wished to offer their support and the offer to speak at this committee about the application. They specifically wished to compliment the applicant on how well run the event was and how much positivity the event brings to the city. This is an event that is widely supported, including by the bid and the docks stakeholders. Based on the running of previous festive events in the docks, a suite of planning conditions have been discussed and agreed with your officers to ensure that the development is properly and appropriately controlled, particularly in the interests of protecting residential amenity. Of note, proposed conditions control the use of the plant, vehicular access, the trading and servicing hours of both the ice rink and the market. We note that there are no objections to the proposal from any consultees, including your environmental health officer and the county highways. The proposal will continue to be managed by the Gloucester Quays events team, who have an excellent track record in managing large-scale events in and around the historic docks. Management of the market in terms of layout, servicing and access has been carefully considered to ensure that the existing properties and businesses, as well as emergency services, are not hampered, and that there is a clear route for movements through the site at all times. So in summary, the proposal to permit the Christmas market and ice rink to continue for a further 5 years will build upon the success of previous years' events and will make a positive contribution to the city, enhancing its profile at this important time of year for both retailers and other people within the city. We hope that you'll support your officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the only public speaker we have. So we now move to questions from members, please. Councillor Tracy.
I'm right in thinking it will be there again for the next 5 years. What happens if they do pull out? Would that, if anybody else would want to take that place, would they be able to have that in the conditions to go into that space then? Please.
Yes, that's correct. So the planning permission runs with the land. So as long as they were in compliance with the conditions, which aren't specific to the operator, then someone else could utilise the planning permission.
Thank you. And am I right in thinking the covering of the ice ring, would that be 24/7, or does the covering come off if it's a nice day in the daytime? Or would that be up? Because I'm thinking, you know, it would contain the noise as well, which the noise would be nothing.
I don't know 100%, but my expectation is that that stays on the whole time. That's quite a substantial structure. And it does help with keeping the surface in good condition.
Right.
So in case, you know, if it were to rain on it, that's going to have a detrimental impact on it. So I would fully expect that stays on permanently.
Okay. And then I know it was explained earlier on, sometimes the generators, they wouldn't create that much noise because it's in a really confined space as such. So it's questions I'm going to ask which, you know, the residents on behalf from the generators. Noise, so much noise? Is it the same as always? Yeah, I know it was spoken earlier, but we'll get a debate going here.
I understand the questions generally about noise from generators. So what was agreed initially with the earlier application was on the back of a noise assessment that modelled a greater number of generators.
Yeah.
And the solution that was proposed was to enclose the generator for the ice rink in an acoustic sort of compound.
Great.
And so that's what they've done to mitigate that. As we've heard, there haven't been any objections that we're aware of due to noise over that time. And actually with the developments in the square where they've been able to introduce some electrical connections, there's less of a need for the generators now. So the only one there now that's proposed in reality is the backup generator for the ice rink. So the other ones that were potentially going to be dotted around the site years ago when they first came up with it aren't now needed. So our belief is that mitigation is sufficient for noise.
All right, thank you. And I haven't got much to say about the question regarding the market stalls, the Christmas market, because it will be more or less the same we had before, there, which would announce the ice ring walking to it. Yeah, okay. Oh, I will ask one question. You said Gloucester event team. Who's the Gloucester event team? Does that come from Carl Pearson or is it Docks Peel Centre event team? It was mentioned about the event team.
Is that mentioned in the report?
Yeah, and the gentleman mentioned it. Yeah, the gentleman said event team. Well, who's our event team for down the docks?
So
It's not our land.
I expect that meant the applicant's event team, but I think the council does have one as well. But I think this is primarily operated by the applicant team in this instance.
All right, thank you. Does that somebody else like to speak? I don't know. All right.
Councillor Wiederholt.
Thank you, Chair. I note that the generator is a temporary backup, and I wonder if, because of any generator will produce emissions, if there's been any thought given to using batteries rather than a fossil fuel generator.
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. That would be a question for the applicant, but as far as I'm aware, they haven't provided any information on that in the application.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that, you know, in the centre of the city where there's a lot of people, there may well be emissions of nitrous oxides, soot, which is not good for one's health. And I'd much rather see a battery which is supplied by a power station down the grid that will kick in as required. Given it's not a permanent requirement to provide electricity, we're getting that off the grid anyway. My preference in a city centre would be to see batteries being used. I have another question. Sorry, while I'm here. I note that the applicant has requested 5 years, which is because financially that makes sense. However, the city may choose in the next 3 years to bring more business to King's Square and that part of Gloucester. And we would then lose that opportunity to possibly use King's Square for an ice rink because we've already given permission to another area. Is it possible that we could consider this temporary agreement to be for a less time than 5 years?
So I'll take this. So the application before you, of course, is to consider a 5-year temporary period. One of the considerations to assist is that the previous permission was for a 5-year period, and the council at the time approved that. Obviously, the circumstances in terms of the other relationship to other open spaces was different, and their availability was different. It's certainly within your gift to reduce that time frame. But what I would ask you to consider seriously, and what you'll need to do, is to weigh up the balance between the economic development and the positive impact on viability and vitality of the area as a whole, of the centre as a whole, against reducing that amount, and then for the applicant to have to come back again in the future, and then the possibility of, with that shorter contract, their ability to be able to sustain that business model in the long term as well. So from the outset, it's considering the application as it is for the 5 years, but certainly it is within our gift to reduce that and to amend any of the conditions as shown in the officer report, but just consider those economic development considerations very carefully. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Marshall.
I was just going to ask, how much does it bring to the local economy each year, and has it stayed at the same rate? Has it fluctuated?
I don't think we have any information on that, I'm afraid. It wouldn't be, something typically that the planning officers would be able to sort of calculate. unless it was offered up by another party. I don't think we've got that sort of information available.
Thank you. I just think it's really good to consider because it does bring money into the city, and it's very important that we think carefully before we change plans. Obviously, we've got the forum coming to the city, so that could maybe change the dynamics of the quays as well.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, my question, Madam Chair, is basically on, are we going to enhance wheelchair access in this development for all of our users? I mean, it's great that, you know, emergency vehicles are going to be able to access the area. And my second question is about, are the smoking areas and vaping areas? Obviously, I'd rather there wasn't any vaping areas, smoking areas personally, but is there any issues that we can look at in that particular area? Thank you.
So in relation to the wheelchair access query, all I have is what the applicant said about they do try to make that accessible. Whether the council independently would look at any of its land holdings or anything it can influence to try and improve that, I couldn't say. I guess it's open to the council to look into any enhancements separately. In terms of the smoking areas, I can only assume that the applicant would make arrangements to comply with any legislation in that regard. It wouldn't typically be a key material consideration for a planning application, but one supposes that the applicant is going to comply with any legal obligations on them to provide for that.
Thanks so much for your response. Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Alistair Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for Highways regarding the Arctic loads, 16.5 metre articulated vehicles and around the swept access path. If there's conditions around the times of access and exit for obviously the erection of the large canopy buildings, what the conditions are around the times of entry and days of entry for said vehicles, given that they probably have to set up and then also leave the site if there's hours around traffic, I don't know, 6 a.m. till say 7 a.m. or such times, so it's not going to impact on the traffic in the area, given that it's a high pedestrian footfall taxi rank there, and obviously there's no other way in entry in and out. It's a dead end. So that's just my query. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Chambers. The highway authorities work closely with the applicant to review the submitted swept path analysis for a 16.5 metre articulated vehicle entering and leaving Orchard Square via Southgate Street, as you've said. We've considered that it's been safe to undertake that in previous years as part of our review. We've also considered that it's also articulated deliveries to the square often occur in regard to the public house, the museum, and other businesses in the area without any problems arising. So we have to consider all of that when considering the safety implication. The Christmas market and ice rink would be erected and dismantled on site in the same manner that's satisfactorily and safely occurred for in excess of 5 years. So in accordance with Manual for Streets for Gloucestershire, details of temporary traffic management arrangements are required. The proposed traffic management plan was provided to us in Appendix 5 of the transport statement that was submitted. Those details were reviewed and they were welcomed and accepted by the Highway Authority as being acceptable. The Highway Authority couldn't find any justifiable grounds on which to sustain an objection to the application, subject to two conditions that we recommended to the Planning Authority. I don't know if you want to take over and explain which conditions were applied.
So I think my colleagues covered the majority of that. In terms of specifically the times, my understanding is that articulated vehicle is used for the ice rink setup, which is right at the very start of the activities. In terms of specific conditions controlling those works, they would be encompassed in the construction and dismantling part of condition 6. So that first section there is about those works in the Orchard Square area. So those can take place at any time between 8 and 6 Monday to Friday, 8 and 1 on Saturdays, if that condition is imposed.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. In the previous planning conditions that have been approved for the erection of this structures, condition 14 on a previous planning application, the one that's just coming up to expire, stated that the PEP supplementary transport, the PEP document was obviously going to be adhered to as required as part of the conditions. But if there's any alternative supplementary transport notes, they have to be issued at least 8 weeks in advance of each year. Just wondering why that's not been added on as a additional condition.
So if members were minded to add that extra proviso onto the condition, I would suggest it's in the gift of the committee to do so. The way that a change to that would operate under what's currently proposed in condition 12 would be that the applicant would be able to apply formally to vary that condition and seek to substitute an alternative arrangement in. So there's a means to do it, or indeed they could just apply again for the whole application were they so minded. If members want to give them the opportunity to submit something else as an alternative in advance within the format of the condition right now at the point of granting, if members grant planning permission, then you can do so, I would suggest.
So am I right in thinking that that condition would give the operator an opportunity to address the PEP transport plan should an issue arise, and therefore not have to come back to full planning application committee should there be a change?
So the way I would envisage this happening is if members added the provision to provide an alternative transport arrangement under condition 12, they would just apply under a discharge of conditions application. Typically, they wouldn't come to committee. The other alternative, which is the alternative I outlined, if the condition was used as currently drafted and they applied to vary the condition, that would be a new full planning application. So again, if it might follow the same route as the current application did, and if it was subject to objections and the council still had a landholding interest, that would be the route that it would end up at committee. So there are slightly different routes depending on whether members want to include that text or not.
Thank you very much. With regards to conditions notes, I see that there's restricted covenants around the Canal Trust. Do we know what those restricted covenants are, and do they pose an issue legally to the erection of these facilities, temporary facilities?
That wouldn't typically be part of the planning consideration. I'm not aware what the restrictive covenants are, but if there are other legal impediments to using the site, that would be separate to the planning decision.
Thank you. Also note the Party Wall Act 1996, and I can't recall there being any application by the tenant previously for engagement of this. Do you know if this is applicable for this term?
Again, that would be separate legislation to the planning system. If there's an obligation under that legislation to approach any other landholder about that, then the applicant would need to do so separately to planning. We pretty much always put a note about those sorts of things just as an informative to applicants, just to remind them of some of the other legislation that influences undertaking a development. So that's normally flagged to applicants where permission is granted.
Thank you, Chair. I have another question. Previously, under the conditions, there was an allowance for a bandstand and amplified music associated with said bandstand. Is that not a requirement in this application going forward in the next 5 years whatsoever for a bandstand?
As far as I'm aware, that's not a part of the proposal now.
Thank you very much. And I believe the timescales tradings being increased from the previous applications. Is that correct?
So the various times at which the applicant is seeking to set up and then use the market and the ice rink, and then the trading hours for the market itself are all slightly different in various regards. So in terms of the trading of the market, that's now only proposed at weekends. It was previously allowed for a longer period of time. And then the hours during which they can set up and dismantle as well in the various areas have changed slightly. So some of them are slightly longer or later in the evening. Some of them are less early in the morning, so the starting point is later in the morning. And there are other days in which they are proposing to undertake those works that are different from the previous 5 years.
Councillor Alistair Chambers, do you have any more questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from anybody else? We come to the debate now. Oh, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the questions I agree with and whatever, and I think they're quite valid. But notwithstanding all of that, we know how to put an event on down the docks now. The events team, both the City Council and the applicant, know what to do, when to do it, whatever, and they know the conditions, and it's something that we want. And do I have to say any more? Because it does bring a lot of money into the businesses down the docks. It's not quantifiable because they won't tell us all the books and this, that, and the other. But we know it does put a lot of money into the local business, not just in the docks, but also in the city, because people come in and then they go up for coffee and all the rest of it. So this is to be absolutely welcomed, you know, and it's the fact is for the next 5 years gives them stability. You know, they can invest into the buildings and this, that, and the other. And to me, it's a no-brainer. I think there are one or two things that are, you know, some of the opening hours. I think it was 8 o'clock on a Sunday. Not so. No, there's another one. There's setting up at 8 o'clock on a Sunday. But got nothing to do with setting up, man.
I know because it's snowing.
Right. So I was just going to say that I think they've thought ahead. They got now the enclosed area, which I think is brilliant. Even if it is raining or snowing, they'll be able to actually have the event, and so that won't put people off going down there. I think it's brilliant. The coffee shops opposite, they'll make a fortune, hopefully. And I just think this is an absolute no-brainer. Let's get on, and good luck to them, and thank you very much.
Councillor Tracy.
Where did I? Excuse me now, put me off my stride. Thank you, Chair. No, I think it's needed. What you've got to remember too, people know what they're buying when they buy in the docks. There's so many activities going on through the year, which we like, and what the residents like too. You'll always have the ones what moan, and sometimes they have discount tickets and everything else to go to these places. That's why they move down here. But we're so lucky too that in our city centre, every day is covering an event which covers down here. And it's only a certain section of people who probably would use the ice ring. And when the coaches come in, they use the city centre as well. They can choose where they're going. And it's good, so it compromises the one. And we're lucky that we got a good events team in the city, which will cover, as I said before, what's going into the ice ring. And good luck to it, because at the end of the day, we don't own it. It's not our place, and it's good that the Peel Centre does all these things for us. And so we're catering for this side of the city as well. And we got the people who wouldn't want ice skating rings. Would you all go ice skating? I'd love to, but I don't think I could. But it's needed. And no, I think it's good. And I'm glad they chose Gloucester again for the next 5 years. So I'm happy to support the application.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you. I support this idea of having the Keys Christmas market for another 5 years. However, my main concern is, once again, we're just taken away from the trade in the city centre, and I feel like we really need to kind of get events going down there. Like the Santa Run is fantastic every year, and if we had like another market down there, it would kind of branch out, maybe another style of market. But I'm all for the application, but I think we just need to take into consideration that we've got the forum built there, and we've got other businesses setting up, and things might just change in the dynamics in the next 5 years. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Alistair Chambers.
I'd like to propose what I believe the planning officer thought was potentially a good idea, hence the reason he didn't say any objections to it, which would probably to include condition 14 from the previous planning condition, which gives the operator an opportunity to adapt the transport management plan with 8 weeks' notice to the council without going through the whole planning process again. For example, it's 5 years is a long time, and if any changes with the road or network come about, or any changes around the Peel group, because you've got different there, you've got GDAC or you've got the Peel group, things can change with the layout. So I think it makes sense to have that flexibility for them, and not the need to go through such a long process, which might implicate the setting up of the structure, etc., and the event. So that's the inclusion of the 8 weeks in advance traffic management plan, and it used to be the previous condition 14 on the last application, to use exactly the same wording for that, as it's been tried and tested over the last 5 years and seems to have worked well. And then the other one, subject to what you discuss and agree, I think what Councillor Alwyn said about uninterrupted power supply, a UPS battery backup system, alternative to a generator, for the very reasons that he said. Not only that, the previous planning as well, conditions that went through for this exact structure and setup stipulated, I think in planning condition 3, no, sorry, not 3, just check out the previous planning condition. It was planning condition 4, and it was generators on Orchard Square shall only be operated within a compound which is fully enclosed by a 2.4 metre barrier with acoustic panels, an alternative form of noise mitigation. So just say there is a power outage with the main incoming KVA cables, This gives an opportunity for the large generators, if we don't vote on an uninterrupted power supply, which is silent run, for this to be contained within acoustic panels. Otherwise, if there is any outage or they need additional power supply because the current incoming is not adequate, the generator's free to run all day, every day during operating hours with no stipulations against it, and therefore causing upset to the residents. And there's less safeguarding in this planning application compared to the previous one. And ultimately, going forward, we should be making things safer for residents, not worse. So I'd like to stipulate the same condition as well, which was condition 4 from the previous planning condition. I'll read that out, which is generators on Orchard Square shall only be operated within a compound that is fully enclosed by a 2.4 metre solid barrier with acoustic panels,
It's like, oh,
unless an alternative form of noise mitigation is agreed in advance and in writing by the local planning authority. So I'd like to bolt those two on. Obviously, we can do away with the acoustic panels if we agree to add in the UPS battery backup system, which would be basically if the power goes out, it's like emergency lights, the batteries kick in, and it should only be there if they need it. So if you wanted to propose that as a condition, I'm more than happy to second it. And I hope people will join me with the 2 conditions that are on previous applications, which obviously the planning officer didn't say that they were negative and they were heeding anything. If anything, they will help the applicants because it gives them flexibility should any changes come with the PEP traffic management plan. So hopefully you can join me in posing those 3 conditions.
Councillor Wiederhold.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Chambers that the applicant ought to consider the use of battery backup UPS rather than a fossil fuel generator.
I'll let the officer speak.
So just before, it's probably a good point for me to come in at this stage. So the condition 14, I'm pretty clear on. It's just replicating the previous, or the condition of the previous consent, and we're more than happy to advise that's okay. That's safe going forward. Condition 4 that was read out by Councillor Chambers, I couldn't see a great deal of difference between that and the condition 4 in the officer report, to the extent that it was materially different. So that we may need a little bit of a discussion on that, just to get an understanding on the difference, so we're fully clear on the wording that members want for the replacement of condition 4. And then there's another element as well related to battery power, which is something that wasn't part of the application. It wasn't put forward by the applicant, and so it's kind of outside the scope of consideration here. So I would be very nervous in recommending a condition that we haven't agreed or discussed or negotiated with the applicant, that would obviously involve an expense to them, and them having not had the opportunity to have commented on it. That creates a great deal of nervousness for me as a planning officer. The alternative is to defer the application and then for those negotiations to take place, but of course then that would be deferred for a month. And then in condition 2, the period for the development is from the 28th of October onwards. So I think the timeframes involved are very tight indeed. I'm kind of leading you down a dead end really there, but that's really the best I can do in terms of advice on the battery matter at this time. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. Obviously, I'm not fit to say with the rules and the Constitution. Are we able to call in a planning deferral on this and shorter than the next planning application, so we could address this UPS idea?
Too late.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying, Pam. You with me? You know, you could have a special appointment. Could this be in a special meeting, say towards the end of the week or next week? Is that an opportunity?
So I think constitutionally, all you'd be able to do is to arrange for, or the council to arrange another committee meeting in between now and the next one. So it'll be kind of in 2 weeks' time. So there'll be quite a lot of organisation involved in that. But in theory, that could result in a decision that, where the applicant was able to meet their timeframes, which are already very tight as it is. So my advice would be not to go down that route on the basis of, of what you're looking to achieve, which is the ideal situation of a battery storage and generating facility, which in an ideal world would be a positive thing. But as I said, it hasn't been put forward by the applicant, and so isn't within the scope of consideration.
Thank you for that. So to lead on to that then, obviously I'll leave it to Councillor Alwyn to say if he proposes a deferral, which I'm happy to support if he does. But just going back to clear that up, what I'd like, you asked about the wording in condition 4, which is the same condition number as the previous application. So the reason I raised that is because it says generators, and there's two types of generators. There's one that's very, very loud, very, very noisy, and it's like basically a two-stroke and four-stroke. It's extremely loud. The decibels reach around 109 decibels when it's running, especially a large one for that. You're probably looking at a couple of 6 kVA, no, if not more, probably a 12 kVA transformer, which is a very, very large instrument. It needs to be craned on and off. So I'd like to append this to that. At the very minimum, if Councillor Alwyn doesn't want to go with the deferral or the battery backup, that it's a silent run, just to add that in there. It's just a cost difference for the event organiser. It doesn't make anything else. It just means it runs silent, not as noisy as a traditional generator. And then with regards to the wording, that was the one point. And the second point was with regards to the previous application, condition 5 stipulated hours for the generator to run. So it wasn't running into the late hours. So I'd probably say that if we can bolt on the condition of hours for the generator to run, because at the moment it could run throughout the night. There's no time stipulation on that. Just say the power supply had run out and they needed to keep the ice running. They could run that generator all night, every night for the duration of the period from October to January. So I think there needs to be a time frame on that. So question to the officer chair, if I am allowed, if we could include conditions 14 from the previous application, as well as condition 5 with operating hours for the generator, and then include the wording silent run for the generator. And I'll leave it over to Councillor Alwyn for his decision on doing a deferral and if people will support it.
The officer wants to speak again. Thank you.
So before you go to the vote on that, just some words of advice. So condition 5 of the previous consent was related to generators in locations where they're no longer to be provided. So condition 5 as was it no longer applies effectively.
Can I come back in that just so I know? So it no longer applies because those generators are on there, but there is a backup generator. So the backup generator is enough power to run the facilities needed if there was a power outage. So I'm only talking about the backup generator. If there's no power outage, that generator will have to run for a sustained time. It's not different, Pam. It's completely applicable. Yeah. So the questions are, and the conditions are only associated with a backup generator. For example, if there is a power outage for a day or two, the generator would have to run. So you need to have stipulations on the running of that. Otherwise, lo and behold, there is a power issue. You can't get a 3-phase supply into certain equipment. They have to run generators, and they just say it's a backup generator, and you've got no conditions in there to manage that. So it is very, very applicable.
Councillor Tracy.
Regarding the generator, which I never asked the question section in that sense. But what happens to the show people when we have the fairs down here? What happens with the tour ships? What happens with everybody else with the generators? If they break down, they come to me and I can get them a generator. We have no problems like that because the residents are not worried about the generators. So houses all run before, and you bring this up this evening.
Because
but if you want a generator, I can get you a quiet one, my dear.
Each application is taking its own merit.
Show people.
I know each application is taking its own merit.
Yeah, but I think, and it's too long, and how do you know all of us can meet? Again, because we're very, very busy. But I know where you're coming from.
Can I interrupt you, please? Councillor Lewis wants to speak.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I mean, this is pathetic. If there's a major power outage in the docks, are they going to worry about one generator running when it's got soundproofing and all the rest of it? Well, they'd be more worried about their freezers and fridges and God knows what else. It is silly. You know, this was very easy to decide on application, and we're messing about things. Though I do agree with the transport one, I get that. I have no problem with that because that's an application which can be sorted out. But it's got an acoustic 2.4 metre solid barrier around one generator, which is a backup. The battery thing, how much is a set of batteries to run that? A ridiculous amount. They might not even bother doing it because we're putting these silly things in the way. It is silly. They've thought it through. They've talked to the officers. They've looked at all the applications before, and this is what we're deciding on, not what we think we want to decide on. It's a planning application, and you can only decide on what is in front of you. That's it.
Chair,
Councillor Wiederhold, please.
Wish I hadn't brought this up. I'm concerned that we're going to approve something for 5 years where potentially a backup generator will be running in the middle of our city, polluting the environment, causing harm to our people. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. And whether we've supported something in the past or not is not relevant. I mean, we used to burn coal in this country. We stopped yesterday. You know, burning fossil fuel in the middle of a city just doesn't seem sensible to me. And I would like to see us in the next 4 years, let this one go through temporarily, but then we should be looking at alternate arrangements to provide power which don't require the burning of fossil fuels in the middle of our city.
Councillor Jones.
I'd be saying two things related here. One is that Alwyn earlier said about harm. I'd quote from the officer opinion, harm to primary shopping area, King Square. We need to think about that post 2029. And we also need to think to achieve net zero by 2030, the battery can be incorporated into this planning going forward in the beyond 2029, the next 5 years. That would be my suggestion.
Any more points from anybody?
Thank you, Chair. I refute your accusations of it being silly. On the contrary, I think you're very silly. The reason being is it stipulates...
Councillor Chambers, there's no need for that.
I was being silly. I was just returning the favour.
No need for those adjectives. Thank you.
So the comment is there's no decibel rating for the generators. It could be as loud as a steam train. There's no decibel mentioning for the acoustic panels. You could just put in a teeny bit of Kingspan that's got a U value and the decibel rating that's like 1. It doesn't make any difference on a 109 decibel machine that's going to be blasting. There's businesses there like Weatherspoons, etc., and the brewery company. You don't want to be blasting generators out there. So really, there should be stipulations on. Okay?
Get on with it.
There should be stipulations on how loud the generator should run, when it should run, because these were all approved by yourself, Andy, at planning permission before. So why are you watering down this planning application, making it less as powerful as it was before? So, if anything, on the contrary, you're the one that's been making mistakes. Thank you.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you. I would just like to say I totally agree with Councillor Jones. We need to move forward with this. We're too late on this one, I feel, with the timings and everything, but moving forward to meet in 2030 climate change, we look at in the next application. It's too late for this one and we need to move on. We're just going in circles here.
Are there any more comments before I make my own?
Can I propose to include condition 14? As the officer said, it's a good bolt-on one, and so to Councillor Lewis, condition 14 to the application to give them the opportunity to adapt the transport plan to make it suitable, seeing as this is a 5-year application.
Really?
So we have an amendment to the original proposition. Condition 14 to be added.
Yeah, so
Yes. So we're going to vote. I haven't made my statement yet, but we're going to vote on condition 14. I need a seconder first of all. Councillor Wiederhold. So we're voting for the officer. I haven't spoken yet, so I will speak. Over 25 years ago, I came to a public meeting with planning officers in this city, which discussed Councillor Marshall's concerns about the effect on the city centre if the quays were developed. The council decided to go ahead and develop the quays. I think everybody would agree it was a good thing to happen, and the effects on the city council really can't be quantified because we don't know what the city centre would be like if the quays was not in operation as it is now with its restaurants and shops and other offers. Also, we see with this application there have been improvements offered over and above what we had from the applicant 5 years ago. We have a canopy over the ice rink now, which I believe we didn't have before. We have more electrical supplies compared with what was originally in place. I'm sure generator technology has moved on in 5 years, and I'm sure the applicant will consider looking at other ways of arranging auxiliary supplies in the event of a power cut. But the quays operates with power from the main supply. If there was an interruption to that, I imagine everything would shut down anyway. That's my comment. So we'll now go on to voting on the officer recommendation with condition 14 added. Sorry? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tracy. So we're now going to vote on the recommendation with that condition added. All voting for it, please. And I think that's unanimous. We voted on that and it's gone through. I'd like to ask the Economic Growth Officer to introduce the report.
Good evening. This is the first report highlighting the updates from Section 106 monitoring. We aim to have them every 6 months, but this is the first one that we're doing since the audit in 2022. The appendix has a report of all historic Section 106 cases that are now present on Execom, as well as existing cases that are ongoing. So for this first report, we have a record of the historic cases as well as the active cases. We hope that moving forward we'll focus mainly on the existing cases that are still open. So based on the recommendations from the audit, we've had to look at our governance, our systems, which mainly come through the use of Execom as a planning tool for recording our Section 106 agreements, which is in effect and is reconciled with our finance team, as well as our Parks and Open Spaces team and our housing team. And we meet monthly to discuss any monitoring issues around that. We report to SMT quarterly, and we aim to make this a regular occurrence every 6 months to report to Planning Committee for information around Section 106s. Do we have any questions? Very short one, to be honest, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Yes, if anybody would like to ask questions. Councillor Stephanie Chambers. Hi, thank you for the report. I know it's been quite a significant amount of work that's taken to get this because of obviously the cyber incident and things. I think the obvious one, and it's obviously before my time and probably before your time, Nana Pierre, that there is a historic Section 106 for further investigation required, and it's in my ward. So there's a couple of questions I have. One, what further investigation is required? And two, with the amounts, so it says Section 106 allocation is 107,000 roughly. When I looked at the document, the Section 106 document on that planning application, it amounts to 132, and I think it's about 9k for libraries, and then the remainder was towards Seven Vale School and Beaufort School. Why is there a discrepancy on that amount? Do you know? It was 132,563. So it showed about 9,000. I have got the document here, but about 9,000 for libraries, and it was 122 something for the secondary allocation or something it was called. And that said it was for Seven Vale and Beaufort School. So I just wondered, so yeah, what's happened with the remaining that's not been spent, and then why is the discrepancy of the amount?
Some of them might be commuted sums, some of them might be monitoring fees. So when I'm talking about the parks, the amount for Parks and Open Spaces allocation is simply for the Parks and Spaces allocation. I hope I've answered the question correctly on that. But I can always go back and check.
Okay, yeah, because it just says Section 106 allocation, 107,000. So I just wanted to know why that's different.
Sorry, I will make it clear in future. It's got a title that says POS, which is Parks and Open Spaces, Section 106.
Oh, okay, so that's just Parks and Open Spaces.
So it's broken down into the various bits, the various clauses, if that makes sense. If you prefer a different format, what I've done is I've simplified it this time. If oversimplifying it isn't the way, if you'd prefer to see the broken down clauses, I can present the information in that way for the next planning committee, if it makes it clearer.
Yeah, I think that would be really useful, and it'd be nice for us to see where, the spread of where it's all going. So thank you for that. So, and then the second question is where we've got to allocate where it's provided in delivering affordable homes. How does the council check that that delivery has actually been undertaken? So say it's 35 homes, how do we check that it's 35 homes?
So that's something we're currently looking at, which is the actioning of trigger points in the agreements, and it's something that we're still looking at how best to approach that situation. We've come up with a few solutions, and we're going to be trialing them out to make sure that we can effectively deal with triggers once they arise, because we're just currently in the process of sorting out all our monitoring and administration of the Section 106s. But I'm also happy to report back on that in the probably before then to you personally, but also in the next planning committee I can make a note to say how we've been progressing on the delivery of trigger points in the Section 106 agreements.
Thank you very much. And obviously this is a new report, isn't it? So I know it'd take a bit of to and fro, but thank you very much.
Any other councillor?
Thank you, Chair. On the former Gloucester Academy Escort Close money, there's 121k allocated to the play area, Plot Court. I'm just wondering what the rest, if you can give me a further breakdown of the rest of the money.
I will. Please. Thank you. I will check back and present that back to you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Councillor Alastair Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. On page 45, the S106 SMT, the financial reporting, top column, to the right, the POS total spend, £2,335,906. The column next to it, the 2,991,000, is that what's remaining and available?
Yeah, well, actually, I've submitted an amendment. It's slightly less than that. Do you have a copy of that?
What's the figure?
It's 2,981,187 £58.
Cool. So if we had a parks requirement, so I don't know, adding additional park equipment to our walls, this pot of money is available for that.
It depends. It's mostly allocated at the time of the drafting of the Section 106 agreement. So it depends on the clause really as to whether it's been allocated for spend within the development, or spend within the ward, outside the development, or spend wider. So it's remaining, but it might have already been allocated.
Yeah, my concern is if that's still there in the pot and it hasn't been allocated or it hasn't been spent, then it has to be passed back to the developer, and that's a lot of money lost in the city.
So, if you look at the column where risk is identified, all the green, all the Section 106 agreements that are covered in green means there is no risk of them being paid back. It's only the historic, the Section 106 agreement that says historic further investigation required that may have that potential, which is a sum of about £7,500. Having said that, we have been speaking to One Legal about that, and it has been allocated, which means that it's possible that it might not have to be paid back. So I'm hoping that at our next planning meeting or sooner, I'm happy to inform sooner, but the next planning committee that will be resolved.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Councillor Castle.
I just want to thank you, Chair. I just want to make a comment that this is a really useful document, and thank you very much for everything you've done to put this together. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say on this section, page 45, under affordable housing number, on Great Western Road railway sidings, it says towards the end there, have we got any further with 87 homes may be delivered through a grant? Have we got any more news on any grant funding coming through there?
I believe it's still in conversation. I could always find out and also present that back at the next planning committee, if not sooner.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Marshall.
I'm just wondering what was happening with the former Colwell School, as it's been abandoned for a long time and there was planning and it just seems to have kind of froze and we don't know what's happening. Is there any more information that can be disclosed or?
Do you mean in terms of the future of that particular site or in terms of Section 106s?
In terms of the future of the site for affordable homes.
I don't know the answer, but I can always check with our housing team and let you know.
That would be really helpful. Many thanks.
So any more questions? Councillor
Can I just
Lewis.
say thank you? It's a lot better than we before because we had nothing before us, but this is really good. Thank you very much.
So moving on to debate. Councillor Tracy?
I think it's good, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
So we just have to note the content?
Yeah.
Everybody happy to note the contents?
Just pass the money my way.
You don't have to vote on it.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We now have to agree the delegated decisions, which we've all received. Everybody happy to note those? Yes, everybody happy with the delegated decisions? All noted? So the next item is the date of the next planning committee meeting, which will be Tuesday, the 5th of November, 2024.